My name is Jacqueline Kwok. I go by JK. I'm an MBA student here at INSEAD. And before that, I was working in private equity. I'm 28 years old, and that makes me a millennial. So private equity and millennials. Sounds a bit weird, but bear with me. I'll ensure that it makes sense later. But let me just start with millennials. What is that? The millennial generation, or Generation Y, are the demographic cohort that comes after Generation X. Researchers say that these are people who are born between the early 1980s to the early 2000s. Now, there's been a lot of talk about millennials lately. We have a very interesting reputation with the media. We're called digital natives because it makes sense. We grew up with technology. We're probably the generation, like Mark said, that cannot live without internet. We communicate with emojis, and we all have smartphones. But at the same time, we're called narcissistic by The Atlantic, or the selfie generation by the New York Times, which is weird because my mom takes more selfies than I do. Whatever you want to call it, I've noticed a paradox in our generation. If we're so narcissistic, if we love ourselves so much, we don't seem to know ourselves very well. Now, I often feel frustrated when I see my friends feeling stuck at their job, feeling stuck in a relationship, or feeling stuck in their marriage, essentially stuck in situations that they thought they wanted. They chose that path because that's what's expected of them. Now, I'm not saying that you should do whatever you want and disregard what everyone else says, nor am I saying that doing what others expect of you is a bad thing. What I'm saying is, if you do what others expect you to do and you end up hating it, what you really learn from that whole experience is what we don't want. Now, this is what doesn't make sense to me. Why is the most informed, most connected generation so inefficient in figuring out themselves and what they want? This is why. There's just too many options. While everyone here is pretending to not know what this is, you guys probably know, this is Tinder. Tinder is a mobile dating app that lets you swipe left and swipe right to reject and accept a long list of potential suitors or dates that are geographically near you. Now, I really don't think our parents' generation had something like this. So whether we like it or not, technology has allowed us to have way more options than we did before. But having options is good, right? More is more is good. You always hear things like, ooh, the possibilities are endless, like it is this amazing thing. But is it really? Here's what I think. I think having options is good, but having too much of it could be bad. Now, the research backs me up also. Barry Schwartz, a professor at Swarthmore College, wrote in his book, or gave a TED Talk on, actually, also, called The Paradox of Choice, in which he says, if we're rational, social scientists tell us added options can only make us better off as a society. This view is logically compelling, but empirically, it isn't true. He uses examples like feeling hungry, wanting to get a snack at the supermarket, but feeling so overwhelmed by the insane amount of options that he has. He also cites another example of him going into an electronics store and realizing that he can choose from 6.5 million different sound system configurations out there. Now, that is a lot of options that you can choose from. Moreover, in the book An Organized Mind, in 2011, Americans have been able to process 5 times as much information as they did when compared to 1986. That is 175 newspapers. Well, that is, again, a lot of content. Well, now we have a real problem, don't we? We have too much information, too many options. How are we supposed to navigate all of those options? Well, I have a suggestion. It's pretty low tech. All you need is yourself. And if you want to get really, really fancy, then a notebook and a pencil. Now, remember when I told you that I worked in private equity? This is where it comes in. I know it sounds weird, again, but please bear with me. It's not what it sounds. When I worked in private equity, I would always hear the analogy of an investment deal being very similar to marriage. You would spend hours and hours and thousands of dollars to figure out whether this is a good investment for us. Kind of similar like marriage or dating. So, in other words, it's not transactional because commitment is involved. It wasn't Tinder, it's Match.com. Now, if you allow, I would like to share with you 3 types of work that we did when I was working in private equity, and how this is a suggested framework to how you should use to evaluate yourself and get to know yourself a little bit better. These 3 things are legal due diligence, financial due diligence, and commercial due diligence. So what are these fancy terms, this business jargon? So let's start with legal due diligence. What is that? That is when private equity companies would hire a law firm and hire a bunch of lawyers to go into our target companies to kind of make sure that they're safe and secure and worth our time. These lawyers would sift through hundreds of legal documents throughout the company's history to make sure that this company is legit. So, as soon as we find something shady within this target company, we would immediately drop the deal and just say bye. We're not working with you. How I look at legal due diligence is kind of like integrity for us, right? We all know and probably agree that integrity is pretty important. So I strongly encourage all of us to take a trip down memory lane and do some legal due diligence on ourselves. What are the skeletons in my closet? What are my weaknesses? How am I going to make amends with them? When we figure out our weaknesses, we're able to keep ourselves from doing things where we don't have that much impact. We're not going to set ourselves up for failure because when we fail, it's frustrating for ourselves and it's frustrating for others too. This helps us narrow down where we should invest our time. Which brings me to my second point, and that is financial due diligence. What is financial due diligence? It is when private equity investors hire third-party auditors to go through our target company's books. The target company what would they do? They would summarize all of their business activities into 3 or 4 financial statements so that the person who reads them can gain a better sense of what this business was all about. We would go through each line item and analyze whether these investments for them make sense, whether these investments are making any profits for them. So in this context, the financial currency used in business is kind of like time for us, and profits are kind of like happiness. So in other words, businesses would invest currency in order to generate profits. And for us as humans, we invest time in things and activities that generate happiness. So this is where our fancy notebooks would come in handy. We can write down what we're doing, where we're spending our time. We can go down each line item of our time investments and figure out whether our activities are actually generating any happiness for us. Now, once we figure that out, once we know our weaknesses, we can then have all the pieces to the most important part, and that is commercial due diligence. Now, private equity companies, they need to know everything about the business. It's pretty tough. You do things like industry analysis, which we can do to ourselves too. That's kind of the contextual, knowledge behind yourself as a person. You ask questions like, where were you born? How did you grow up? We usually don't have that much say in it, so we can answer that quickly and move on. What private equity companies, or the team does, is that they figure out the key drivers of a business and why these key drivers are generating profits. That sounds awfully similar to what makes us tick, and why do those things make us happy? The private equity company would then ask a lot of questions to a lot of different parties. We would start with the company's management team or the founding team, ask them what they're good at, ask them why they got into this business in the first place. And then we would verify their story with their suppliers and their customers to make sure that no one is lying to anyone, no one is exaggerating anything, and all the stories align. Same goes for us. Now, we may have like a very blurry idea of what we're like, what we don't like, what makes us happy. But it's always helpful to verify what your theories are about yourself with your suppliers, like your parents, or your customers, like your significant others. Now, through tying up the 3 types of due diligence work, the private equity investor now has a better idea and can reasonably paint a picture of what this business was all about. Same goes for us. Through doing the 3 types of due diligence work on ourselves, we have a better ability to paint a picture of what business we're in. And then we can be on the right track to figuring out what we really want. Now, I know, like I said, I'm 28 years old. Who am I to tell you what to do with your life and how to become self-aware? But I will say this. I will share with you a piece of advice that I got from a consulting partner who came on campus. I asked him, what is INSEAD's biggest value proposition? I'm going to paraphrase his answer and shorten it a little bit. It was pretty long and comprehensive. But essentially, he said, business school is the time where you can stop and reflect upon yourself. INSEAD has students from all over the world. You can take advantage of your classmates to learn more about the world and how you fit in. I couldn't agree more. See, INSEAD is ending for some of us. It's really sad, and it will fly by very quickly for others. Now is the time to get to know yourself. Because once you re-enter the real world, you're going to have to devote your time to your family and/or job, which is tough. And I just gave you a framework suggestion to how to do that, and that is legal due diligence, financial due diligence, and commercial due diligence. Yes, we're very lucky to have so many options presented to us, but it is so overwhelming to have to navigate through all of that. Yes, we may be the most narcissistic, selfie-taking generation out there. But if we put in the time and work to get to know ourselves better, we can then leverage what is given to us, all the options, all the information out there. Then maybe we can be the happiest also. Thank you.